Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm Liz Heiman, and each week I'm joined by your crew of seasoned sales experts who have navigated these waters and come out victorious. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Heiman, and I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Daryl Prowl, Chris Bowen, Mike Simmons, Bryn Tillman, and Renee Bigelow. And today we're going to be talking about sales compensation and motivating sales teams to do what you want them to do. And I think this is a super important topic. And I've been having this conversation a lot lately. My sales team isn't doing what I want them to do. Should I compensate them? So I think let's just kind of start with what are the things that sales teams are looking at, facing? What are the things that get them thinking about how they're going to behave, what decisions they're going to make, and how they're going to prioritize? And then in the next couple of episodes, we can dive into some of these topics. But I want to start by throwing out a couple of thoughts. And one is this whole idea of, as a salesperson, there are so many things that can get in the way of my selling, right? So if I want my sales organization to sell, one of the things that I have to do before I talk about compensation, before I talk about anything else, is I have to talk about how do I help my sales team actually have time and space to sell. And right now in the United States, 90% of salespeople are dissatisfied with their job, and 70% of those are looking for a new job. And what they say, and I can't remember where this came from, but what the study showed was that they were complaining about things called drag, things that we refer to as drag. And drag would be things like the amount of time it gets for the internal team to approve or put together a proposal, the number of different apps I have to use in order to get my job done, the amount of time I spend in meetings that aren't relevant to what I'm trying to accomplish as a salesperson. These kinds of things that get in the way of salespeople doing their jobs. So if we start with this sort of premise of, if we want salespeople to sell, then we have to enable them to sell. And we have to understand that when they are not able to sell, when things get in the way, they get disappointed, they get frustrated, and they don't want to sell. So we are later going to talk about compensation, but compensation only can do so much. So let's talk a little bit about, again, we've done this before, a day in life in the salesperson. What are they doing? What should they be doing? And how do we help them do that?
Can I, before we get into that, I just want to yes and something you said. I just took an SEL course, and there was an exercise where we talked about what the exercise was. What do you believe your buyers are searching for? My buyers are sales professionals and leaders, right? And so I thought they were looking for how to build a better pipeline, how to prospect better. Like, I had a whole list. They were all really far down. And I think, Liz, we talked about this, the two terms that came up. Number one, how do I manage up to a narcissistic boss? And the second one is, how do I navigate a toxic work environment? So I just want to share. So I actually am now on a mission and writing a book for 2026. And my potential TEDx is The Narcissistic Salesperson and the Journey to Recovery. But before we talk about, like, what does the day look like, what are they walking into and feeling? So that's all I have to say about that.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I think Bryn has hit on something that I think is not just limited to sales. I have to look at a conversation that I've had with my employees, whether they're sales, marketing, or other, and those people that I've mentored over the years. It's pretty much what Bryn just alluded to, which is I cannot get excited to go to work for a toxic environment. I'm having a hard time motivating myself to do the work because I feel like no matter what I do, my boss, every time I did it wrong, or I didn't do it their way, I didn't do it at the time. I feel like we have these conversations and they nod their head and they totally ignore it and they never follow through. So over and over and over again, the advice I'm giving the people, first and foremost, is not how to be a better marketer, not how to be a better salesperson. It's how to be a better employee, how to manage up. I love that you talked about, the narcissistic boss. Oh my God, that is like overwhelming. And it's not limited to like CEOs. Like it could be a sales manager, right? I became a manager because I was a rock star sales rep, even though I've got zero management skills and now I'm effing up something fierce across the board. But I don't know that because my ego is too big for me to see it. But everybody else is collateral damage. How do I motivate myself for that? So I think people skills, management skills, empathy, the whole idea of actually, understanding that you got to where you're at as a leader because of your raw skills, but now you need to develop a whole new set of skills. And if you do that, your team will perform better, needs to be there in the sales training. And rare do I ever see that.
Who'll pay for it?
The company. I mean, think about just retention. How much does it cost to replace an employee? How much does it cost on your reputational damage? How much does it cost you on misperformance numbers because the people are motivated or they're annoyed or they're upset? It's an investment, no different than you would invest in a computer or a cubicle or whatever else it might be.
Do you think people really will pay for that?
That's a different question.
So I think they'll pay for it if it's a priority for them. But if the boss is a narcissist, there has to be a good enough ROI for them to decide to pay for it because that's all they think about. So, I mean, as I go through, and Liz and I had such a discussion around this because it is, I think the narcissistic salesperson, the narcissistic sales leader, it's all about so we'll talk about KPIs that matter to me as a company, that matter to my shareholders, but it's not about what matters to the buyer. It's not about so do they care? If they're narcissists, they're only going to care about how it impacts them. However, if they are on a journey to bring value to their marketplace, there are, and I'm working with some sales leaders that they've made a lot of money, that companies have made a lot of money, and they want impact. They want to make sure that they are showing up in a way that builds a better reputation, that doesn't create the fear in the marketplace that, they're being scammed, that they're being sold a bill of goods, right? That they build a trust-based reputation. They will care. And if they know they have to make an impact, they will implement. It is still probably a very narrow group of people. But the last thing I'll say on that is if you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, care about your buyers. That will differentiate yourself. That's how bad it is out there. Yep. So that's
I shifted my business.
Whoops.
I shifted my business last year and really started focusing on leadership. Now I tried to be half pregnant, so to speak, and do leadership and sales at the same time. And we know that doesn't work. In October, I changed everything and primarily focused on the leadership stuff. And I can tell you, it is very hard to find people who will pay for this. Based on my experience as a high-performing revenue professional who knows how to sell, it is very hard to find people who are willing to pay for these things. And there's so much technical debt, organization debt that we've taken on over the years that has gotten in the way of it. This includes the short amount of time leaders are in roles. Anybody know what the average lifespan of a P of sales is today?
It's less than 18 months, isn't it?
Less than 18 months.
It's more than marketing.
It keeps shrinking. I've seen data that shows that it's as low as 14 months. I've not seen it get down to a year. Here's the unfortunate thing.
But if
Those
you're talking about that
14-month
being,
ones typically have some kind of a comp plan where they structured things where there was a way for them to earn out and exit. So the likelihood of them actually either being given notice is that it happened in under a year. And so I think it's cool that we're all talking about leadership stuff, which is really important to me. It's core. It's core to how we're successful in business, and it's what sales is. Sales is an act in service of others. It's an act of leadership. It helps people move forward. One of the core skills is problem solving. And one of the challenges here, though, is many times we go out there and I'll again, this is something I'm excited and passionate about. We go out there and we start looking for other people to lead us. And that's the wrong way to do it. Leaders build leaders. Leadership starts with self. Leadership is how we move forward. Start building your own leadership of self capabilities, which includes communication, design, goal setting and execution, decision making, and problem solving, core skills like the ones that folks have been talking about. I think the biggest challenge you're going to run into for anybody listening to this who's excited about it and is thinking about leading up or managing up or communicating up, you need to invest in it on your own because no one's coming to do it for you. And you've got to make a choice. Is that what you want to do? And do you want to build the future leaders of tomorrow? Or do you want to whine, complain, bitch and moan about the people who are operating in leadership roles that we promoted into those roles because they really were good individual contributors, but they didn't know what leadership was before they moved into it.
But what you're getting at, and I 1,000% agree, is there has to be an intentional, conscious effort by either senior leadership or even sales leadership to create that culture. And I do agree that if we're self-aware enough to understand that's what makes a successful organization, it starts there. Then we have to lead that way. The issue, of course, and now I'm stating the obvious, that we face is that, and I'm going to be totally stereotypical here, I'm sorry, folks, there's too many tech bros and tech gals that want to talk to each other and slap each other on the ass and tell us how great we are, how nobody else isn't as smart as we are, and then go back and just, talk nonstop and spew, which is the opposite. And those people are not self-aware enough to ever create that culture. So
why are they not self-aware?
Because they're insecure, but that's just what Dr. Darrell says.
well, if you go back and you look at when HubSpot was, I'll say, growing pretty fast and still relatively young, one of the things they realized was everybody that worked there was essentially their friend, right? They were all roughly the same age, things like that. And Brian Hannigan ended up being like, we have to change this up because there's no doubt that we're missing pieces of both the opportunity, but also things that we need to do internally in order to grow, because we all sound alike. We all think the same way, and made a conscious effort to make that type of shift. I don't know how long that has stuck or if it still has stuck, but I always found the perspective interesting of being able to step back a little bit and say, hey, what's the gap from really where we're at to where we need to be, and what would we have to change in order to make some of those things happen? And I don't think enough organizations do that. And it's not a short journey. So it's, if you're public, trying to hit quarterly numbers and do those types of things becomes real challenging.
So hang on just a second. So what we're saying is that if we want our sales people, our sales executives, or whatever role they're playing to be successful, we need to create an environment in which they can be successful, which means that we need to promote and train people who have some self-awareness and are able to be good leaders that create a good environment. And that if we are not investing in that, the cost is high because 90% of salespeople aren't satisfied and 70% of those are looking for a new job. And what we know is that the cost of replacing a salesperson, which we tend to do, less than 3 years, like we're constantly churning over our salespeople, we're spending a lot of money and losing the opportunity cost of an untrained salesperson is high. So the cost of not having solid leadership, enlightened leadership, diverse in thinking leadership that creates an environment where salespeople can be successful, that we are costing ourselves as a company a lot of money. Did I just interpret that right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things is also when you're going through this, if you bring on the wrong leader, right? When you're going through this, the competition isn't sitting still waiting for you to figure out your shit, right? They're moving forward. So you're not only losing the internal organization that you've built and possibly good reps and everything else, but your competition is now either catching up or lapping you at that point because of this internal strife, because that's ultimately what's going to end up happening, right? If people are not motivated, I think I've said, like, people will go to work for somebody for a title and they'll do it for a short period of time out of respect for that thing. But ultimately, if you show that you're going to invest in those people, help them grow, help them get to where they want to be, things like that, those people will run through walls for you, right? If you consistently do that and you make them better. But if you're not willing to do that, well, then you're gonna have a pretty rapidly sinking organization over the midterm. I don't think
So it was interesting. I did the classic, let's ask Gemini Pro, Copilot, everybody else, what are the top 3 things we need to do to motivate sales reps? Because one of the things that's always interesting about these podcasts we do is that you could go and do what I just did. You could go and ask any, AI agent you want to, GPT, etc., and get the answers. What you're hearing here, though, is a lot of wisdom and life experience and anecdotes and stories of lessons learned. So the two come together well. What was interesting was when I asked that question, I had one of the top 3 things. Number 3, so this is a little bit for you, Liz, to kind of recap, because you did a great job there. It said I found this ironic, fostering a positive and supportive culture. Now, the reason I found this ironic was because I asked the question halfway through this discussion. So it wasn't like this answer fed our answer. And then they break it down. They say, 1, focus on trust and autonomy. Give your reps a sense of ownership over their work. Number 2, celebrate wins, big and small, publicly acknowledge and celebrate achievements. 3, team building, encourage collaboration and a sense of community, team mentorship, team activities, best practices. And 4, and I love this one, offer regular constructive feedback. So feedback doesn't have to be a negative, scary process. It can be a constructive process. Go beyond just monitoring quotas, regular one-on-ones, coaching. What are your challenges? Offering guidance. That makes overall that umbrella of a positive and supporting culture. I want to work there. I don't dread getting out of bed and doing this 5 days a week or more. I'm not constantly scanning the LinkedIn, notifications I'm getting of another job for what I do, but another company. This is what makes me want to stay, to the point that Chris was just talking about. This is what makes me loyal. So there you go.
Daryl, I feel like you've sort of teed up. You all know I'm going to pop in with something on
Of
culture.
course you are. Hi, baby. Oh.
Your culture is 100% intrinsically tied to your brand. So I can't not bring that up. But there is a big piece of this. We're talking compensation and we're talking culture. And one of the big missing pieces that I see is a lot of compensation is set from a downstream point of view. What is the KPI we need to hit this quarter or something like that, right? And those are important. Absolutely. We all have goals and we need to hit them. But the piece that's often missing is compensation being tied upstream to your values, to your purpose and values for your company. And it doesn't matter. All of this is about bad alignment in many ways. Like if we're talking about from the CEO to the sales leader to the sales team, to the operations, to the marketing, a lot of this dissolves when you take those numbers, those compensation numbers, and you tie them upstream as much as you do downstream. Then everybody is rewarded and pointed toward the thing that you have already defined as critical to your culture, which is your purpose and values.
And I cannot wait because we're going to really dig into that in the next episode. So you just teed that up beautifully, Renee. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up unless we have anything else that we wanted to drive home. But if we want a successful sales organization, right, which is when we're talking about compensation, we're talking about motivation, that's what we're talking about. But first, we have to create an environment where they can thrive. And I always say, as a sales leader, or I'll talk to people who do sales enablement, what's your first job? Your first job is removing every obstacle to that person doing their job, which is selling. Right? Enable your team to sell if you want them to be motivated and happy to be there. Two, and we didn't talk about this, but just really quickly, you have to have the right people for the job that you have hired in your company. So if you're hiring the wrong people to do the job that you haven't really aligned the skill set and the job, you're going to have a bunch of really unhappy, miserable people who aren't successful. So regardless of how you motivate them, if they don't have the right skill set to do that job and they can't learn it or don't want to learn it, you're not going to have a good environment. So we have to create an environment. We've got to get the right people in there. And we need to, as Mike was talking about and Bryn, we need to continue to train those people that are in a leadership role to be good leaders. So can we wrap that up here? Is this what we need to do before we can even begin talking about compensation and KPIs?
Yes.
So I'd love to just add one more thing. So again, and something that Liz and I were talking about, training needs to be focused on the right activities. I know this is going to kind of bridge into KPIs, but there's so much sales training out there that's focusing on the wrong things, that's creating the wrong behaviors. So we have to align what we want to be with what we are teaching out there. And I know that's going to go, I want to be careful I don't jump into KPIs too quickly, but I think just knowing that what leadership is teaching is wrong mostly.
Liz, I'll add one parting thought too, on top of what you were just saying about hiring correctly and training that all goes together. There's a huge movement right now in human resources to reconfigure how hiring is done. And the chatter at the moment, and the number one thing they're retraining human resources professionals for, is skills-based hiring versus credential-based hiring. So like screening people through the process based on skills. And there's a lot coming out of SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, about the skills-based hiring. And I think sales is probably one of the top places where skills-based hiring would benefit.
All right. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. If you want a team that is delivering the results that you need them to deliver, you need to create an environment where they can do that. And we're going to talk more about compensation and KPIs and motivating in the next 3 episodes. So join us there. Everybody, have a great day and happy selling.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope that episode has equipped you to navigate sales leadership with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to your Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on LinkedIn or YouTube. Until next time, keep sailing toward your sales goal.